Welcome back to More Than. I'm your host, Kevin Carroll, powered by First Tech Federal Credit Union. We have a special guest. But before I actually introduce our special guest, once again, I always like to give a little bit of the backstory of First Tech. So, 1952, it was started by Tektronix employees. Innovation was emphasized and reflected in the slogan, the motto, think forward. This is in the 1960s. Fast forward, 1986, the name is changed to First Technology Credit Union, then shortened to First Tech Credit Union, and then we are here today with this thinking forward, amazing brand. I love me some First Tech, and absolutely, I am enthralled with our guest. Our guest today is the Vice President of Marketing, Chylon Pappas, and we have done a lot of projects together, and it's all love here.
So, it is. Thank you for having me. This is great.
Thrilled to have you here. Thrilled to have you here, and I think our guests are going to get enlightened and inspired, but I think even more so, the way you view just storytelling and the importance of it and branding and marketing and all those things, I love that you have a unique approach to it. So let's talk about how you got into this.
Yes.
Right? And so let's talk about just the financial industry and credit unions in particular. Like, why that? Why would you be inspired by that or want to lean into that? Because it goes back a few decades.
It does. So I've been in the financial industry for about 20 years. And just like everything in my life, I fell into this. You know, I was going to school, I was pursuing business and communications, but didn't really have that next step for me. I was kind of just floating for a minute, and I needed some money. So I was working in town at a coffee shop, and I saw an ad in the paper for a part-time teller at OSU Credit Union. And, you know, I didn't know a lot about credit unions, but I knew the name OSU was somewhat tied to my school, so I thought, okay, I'm going to go check this out. So I became a part-time teller on Saturdays on the 9th Street branch, and I had a great time. I got to meet new people. I was actually really good at the role. You know, you're moving fast and handling
Especially
money. Saturdays, and the drive up would go all the way to the street, and it was a really good time. And at that time, I was still trying to explore what my life was going to be like. And I stumbled upon the CEO at that time. She was coming upon her retirement, and she asked me a question that probably changed my life. She asked me if I would be interested in exploring the credit union industry. She said that there weren't a lot of people like me in the industry, and would I be interested in maybe floating around the organization and learning a little bit more. So in that moment, I said yes. And so that's really how my credit union journey began.
Someone finds us, or we find someone who is our catalyst. Yep. Mine was Miss Lane. So for you, this woman who sees something in you, and they're kind of peeking around the corner, right, ahead of us. And they envision you or see the potential of you. And I just love the fact that you had that individual in your life that saw something in you, identified an opportunity, but you have to say yes.
At that moment, I was really young. I thought I knew everything but nothing. So for me, this was like, okay, in my part-time, you know, take me off teller row, send me around the credit union and just learn. And so I did that. So I had the opportunity to work in card services, doing card disputes. I did some merchant services work. I was in IT, which I should not have been in there. Finance, same thing. And then I fell into marketing. And that's really when I started to lean into, okay, this is what I want to do. This is a storytelling I want to do. This is how I want to connect consumers to what we have to offer and what they need.
You start to understand how to navigate a business. Because it's not easy when you're young.
No.
Because you don't have a lot of life experience to lean on, and, you know, the water cooler conversations and all of that. So you start to understand listening to other people's stories.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that I've always admired about you is you're an active listener. You're a really good listener, which I would imagine is important for a storyteller.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And did you learn it there?
I think so. I'm good at trying to learn about people. And so if I learn about you and I know something about you, we have a connection. Then I can understand you better. I can help you make decisions better. I can help you unlock a door for me better. Same for us. So I think just being able to listen and be genuine with people has served me very well.
The individual that you met and did they teach you how to listen better, or did you pick that up from other sources?
I think I started to pick it up from everyone there. I think the executive team that was in place at that time, they were very genuine and really spent a lot of time getting to know me, or I would notice, my managers looking at me, like really paying attention to me. And as I saw those individuals as I went on in my career, always said, we thought you had something in you. And I didn't know that at the time. Silly me, I'm running around doing what I do, but they were looking at me and supporting me. And so the way I actually learned about First Tech at all was because I was working in marketing, and it turned out that we were going to be launching our first online banking product, which really dates me a little bit, but that's fine. Yeah. And so the head of marketing at that time knew someone in marketing at First Tech, and they asked me to go up to Beaverton and write the first online banking brochure for the credit union. And it was amazing. I wish I could get a copy because it was so old, and it was 6 pages long, and like step 1, turn computer on, step 2. It was not what you don't get a manual for that today, but at that time that's where we were.
Some people need those manuals still.
I do too sometimes, but I'm trying to be cool. Okay?
Yes,
I'm trying.
Yes.
Yeah, so I went up to First Tech and I walked in the building, and it was like magic. It was like something, the energy, everyone was moving so fast. And I learned all about the product, and I wrote my brochure, and that was the moment that I realized that's where I needed to be.
What year was that?
I believe that was 2000, end of 2000. So I was just kind of figuring out, okay, I'm done with school. I need to get serious and take it seriously. And that was my moment. And I didn't know how when I drove home. I didn't know how I was going to get there. But I was going to get there.
So that was, you put them in your crosshair.
Oh, like yeah. When I walked in that building, I didn't want to leave.
Wow.
And I still feel that way this far into my career.
I think that's fair to say, because, my love for First Tech and my relationship with them is 25 years, right? So in 1997 when I moved out here. So I understand that feeling of feeling invited and welcome, which I think is very indicative of that place, and also just the energy in there, right? That what are your ideas and what are you trying to do? And it's not just exclusive to the employees, they're doing it with the members too.
And think about where First Tech came from. So we were built from the tech community. Yep. And one of my favorite things that I used to do before the pandemic, I haven't done it as much now, is if I'm at the grocery store and I see someone pull out a First Tech debit or credit card, there's a story told with that. There's not just, oh yeah, I'm a member. It's, I joined here and my mom set me up, or I learned this, or I joined at Amazon or Intel. So they're immediately forming community with me without me even revealing that I work there, that I'm in marketing. I'm just a regular old shopper asking how you get that credit card.
Yeah, and I think people are real quick to share it.
They share it.
Yeah, because they're very proud to be affiliated and connected to. And I love the fact that this whole notion of community, right? It really is embodied within First Tech, and how people want to quickly invite you to join or to understand why they're a part of it. So as you are journeying through 2000 in your crosshairs, doesn't happen right away though.
Doesn't happen right away.
But you don't forget about it.
I don't forget about it, but you mentioned people that are looking at you. And at that time, I didn't know it, but the head of marketing for OSU happened to be really good friends with a former executive, but returning executive at First Tech. And so I revealed to her that this is what I wanted to do. And she placed a call to help me figure out how to get my foot in the door. And that's all I needed. Between the two of them, they worked to get me there. And at the time, there was no roles in marketing. I think marketing at that time maybe had 4 or 5 people. And so I worked in the call center, part-time in the call center out in Hillsborough. And because OSU Credit Union and First Tech used the same core system, I could just go right in, and I knew how to process loans and transactions. So it was an easy fit. But I got there and I said, okay, now I'm here. Let's figure it out. But yeah, so I knew enough that I could be dangerous. I knew that, I was emailing with members, but I was comfortable with member interactions. And then a position became available in business development. And so that role was really me working with our SEG partners. So for First Tech, we are a SEG-based credit union, which means your employer has to become a part of our field of membership for you to join. So I would work directly with those companies to ensure that their employees knew about First Tech. And then finally got myself back over into marketing. So then, so I was able to get back to marketing and really more of the communications and events side of marketing, but I was back. So it was a longer road, but I don't think I would do it any other way. I think I met everyone on that journey.
So I want to actually point out something, recreating the rotational opportunity to learn more. I honestly think that informs why you have a level of empathy and understanding for the members and the stories that you want to tell, the why behind it, because you're not siloed.
No.
You understand so many different parts of the organization and how one story can affect and impact all those different parts.
Yeah.
Instead of just we're telling a marketing story and that's
Correct.
what we're going to tell and we're good.
Yeah, and I think that it's easy to look back at that journey and say, well, but technology has changed and these departments have changed and how the complexity changes, so you don't understand that. But you kind of have a basis, right? You have a baseline to at least be dangerous enough that you understand what people are working with, and that way it informs your strategies and how you navigate. So I recommend that for people. I'm such a fan of the credit union space because there's so much opportunity. And if you're young and you're really looking to be in business, you have the opportunity to really try things out and find out where you fit. And it was very rewarding for me. And it feels like I worked at several companies, not just one.
Boom. So I'm supposed to talk with you about superpowers, but I already kind of know one that you have, and maybe you wouldn't frame it this way, but curiosity is so important for you to be able to do what you did. You have to be curious as opposed to just myopic, right? I've got this locked in, I want to do this. And so the notion of, let me get in where I fit in first, just get in.
Just get in.
If you let me in and then get out my way, I'm gonna figure it out. But I love that your agenda was, how can I stick here? How can I add value here? And relationships. So I've deduced
building relationships. That's
relationships,
the key.
right?
Yep.
But that comes from curiosity. I have to want to know your story. I have to want to know what you're about. I have to want to know what you do. So I think that's really wonderful that you had that early.
Yeah.
And it has served you well through your whole career.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think relationships are very important. Being curious is important, but being brave enough to raise your hand for the next thing. I remember right around the time that First Tech went through a pretty big merger and our new CEO came into the picture. And the comment at that time was really, if you want to do more, just raise your hand. And we can, if you're looking for a leadership role, raise your hand, identify yourself, let us know so that we can put you in the right spot. And that's really when I made that jump from an individual contributor to a director. So I'd never been in management before, but during that time I knew, okay, there's gonna be an opportunity here, and when it's time, I need to take it. And so actually, one of the individuals that helped me get into the credit union in the first place helped me become a director. So it's all connected. I think that the world stays connected, so it's been quite cool.
And you also have to have the intention to keep those connections, right? And sustain those connections and nurture those connections.
Yep.
And so I always talk about being less transactional and more transformational. And I think that's so important, because if people are figuring out that you got an agenda, they're going to push you away.
Correct. Yeah,
but if
yeah.
they see and sense that you don't have an agenda, you're just trying to build, let's build, they're always going to be putting on you. And one of the most powerful things, and I'm sure you will agree, when people are advocating for you when you're not in the room.
Yep.
That's what I'm hearing in your story.
Yep.
Is that folks were speaking up for you and you weren't in the room. They were offering up you as this, talent when you weren't in the room, but you had to develop that relationship
Absolutely.
with them. And Chylon, I just know, this is really actually super helpful for me. I was in military intelligence, so I'm gleaning all this intel on you now.
Great.
So now that I know that this is what you are about, curiosity, relationships, speaking up. My Nana would say, a closed mouth don't get fed, speak
Exactly.
up,
Yep.
right? Your courage, all these things, it all makes sense now. Now that I'm sitting here, but we've worked together, I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
that's where that comes from. And I love the fact that these things are so important and you actively practice them. What do you think is, when you're using that on a day-to-day, how do those help you tell great stories? On behalf of First Tech, how do those traits, those gifts and talents that you have, how do they help you tell great stories?
I think one of the things that we've been trying to do with First Tech, and I think you mentioned it, everyone has this great feeling about their membership with us, right? But I'm curious about the stories that brought each individual member to First Tech. And so when we start to make member stories, you were able to participate in one. It was less about the great checking account that you received that moved through your day. Like it's not about that. It's about your story and what are you up to and what makes you get out of bed every morning and where are you going? And we're just a part of that journey. So it's really important to get at who you are and make it less about us. So the storytelling for us continues to mature, continues to evolve. That's the power of the First Tech brand, is the member story. It's all about our members, right? We wouldn't be here without the collection of members that we have.
What do you think, if you were able to, I wish I had more of X, Y, or Z to tell even greater stories? Is there something that maybe it's not even invented yet that you wish that you had that could actually help you tell greater stories? Like the ability to see the future, or do you wish that you had something already available to allow you to really maximize the stories?
I think for me, it's more volume of stories, right? I think, there's usually a member who's willing to share with us, but there's those that aren't, and they're doing some really big things. And I want to make sure that in that collection of almost 700,000 members, how does a story like mine, where maybe it's not as significant as, someone who's doing major things in a tech firm, but those stories matter because what it does is it builds some sort of connection to someone that said, hey, I can be like her, or I can aspire like her, and I can grow my financial future the way that I want to and empower them. I think that's something that I would want to do more of, right? It's a little bit more time consuming. People don't necessarily want their stories told, but I think it's important to really build that sense of community around our brand. I think that's why we've gotten as far as we have.
And I think there's clever ways to tell those stories or to share those stories, and social media is one of the ways that we can do that and have variety and diversity of the way we deliver a person's story. So maybe they don't want to be on camera, but we can do something with text or copy or something like that. Are you finding really clever ways to maximize social media to communicate with the members?
Yeah, we are. And I think, one of the things out of the pandemic, and even before, we realized that in the social space, being authentic is the most important thing you can be. And I think that the traditional playbook of, okay, credit union, insert product here, great, go. I think that wasn't working for us. We needed to flip it. And so we've been trying to listen more to our community. What do they want to hear about? What's going on in their lives? What are they thinking about? And so early on in the pandemic, we did create a lifestyle series. And it was just something, sitting in my house one day, I was talking on the phone to another colleague, and I said, how do we give people things that they can use right now, right? We were all setting up home gyms. We were all trying to make a movie in the backyard, we're remodeling, all of these things that we were all talking about. It was, very much a part of the dialogue at that time. I said, what if we brought people actual resources to help their lives? And so we created that series just to get people feeling like, the pressure of everything that was around us. We gave them something different. And in that moment, we weren't the experts. We just weren't. So we needed to invite the community in to help us tell that story. And I think even partnering on the podcast and giving people ways to see what's out there. I think that's uplifting. And I think that's the way we want to go in our social channels, is really just to be responsive of what's happening around us versus what we want to tell as a story.
And I think the more that you lean into your foundation, members first, and always demonstrating that, and that's your filter, you're never going to lose, right? You're always going to be winning that way. I think that's one of the key things, and you being the caretaker of that and making sure that, hey, is that a members first? Is that something that's going to help our members? Is that going to advance our members? Is that going to help them think forward? All these things that are, that's your calling, right? That's the thing that is the mandate, if you will, for the work you're doing. And so always being that litmus for that, I think that's so brilliant that you decide that you are that person. I'm going to make sure that this is always focused on that.
Absolutely. We say we put the member at the center of everything that we do. And I think that is very important. I think that's a very good North Star for our business to say, does this make sense for a member? Even when we write communications, often with my CEO, how would the member feel about this? So we do really think about every word, everything that we put out there, everything that we build, any technology is this going to make your life better, help you do what you need to do, help you not have to pick up the phone? I mean, that's the goal.
And so we've been navigating this global traumatic event, this pandemic, still ongoing. And I know that we faced a lot of challenges personally and professionally. What are some of the challenges that you've noticed around storytelling in First Tech, and and that you're trying to navigate and solve for right now?
During the pandemic for us, I think number one, everything that you're doing as a leader is being disrupted. So all of the ways that I navigated as a leader, those things started to change, and I sat behind a computer screen. So just being able to make connections was really difficult to do. We also were going through a process of really trying to refine the First Tech brand and really bring, less product, bringing it more about the person that we want to attract, right? That tech employee. And so we got pretty creative. During the pandemic, we would go out and just do informal interviews with potential members, people that may not even know us. We learned about them, what's on your mind? What are you thinking about? So as we started to build more of our brand and more of our marketing, we were targeting the right audience, and it was slowly but surely starting to work. We brought in some new agency partners at that time. It was like a perfect storm of us being disrupted, but disrupting ourselves. And at the end of the day, I feel like we came out with something more genuine. It was challenging, but I'm glad we did that so that we can now move forward and get back to some of the storytelling that we had been doing before the pandemic.
Yeah, and do you see an obstacle or do you see an opportunity?
It's opportunity every day.
Right,
Yep.
every day,
Every
right?
day.
And I think the fact that you all recognized, yes, this is an obstacle, it is disruptive, but actually how can we use this energy, right, and actually move us forward with new ideas, things that may have been tabling. Hey, we've got time. I've always said there was power in the pause. There was a lot of power in that pause, and so the fact that you all found a way to advance ideas, things that we weren't able to get to, identify new ways to communicate. One of the things that we know is you're really competing for the members' attention, right? Because there's so much
going on.
So much going on. So telling compelling stories, sharing great insights, things that are of value, always having them at the center of all of your conversations. I think that's so amazingly skillful and clever and important on your part. So how do you fuel yourself though? Because I think you're not a bottomless well of creative energy,
No.
right? And you've got to show up with a certain level of creative energy and just energy in general. So do you have a regiment of keeping yourself right and ready to fight the good fight?
Yeah, so for me, it's making sure I'm taking time to be internal, and I'm thinking, and I'm seeing what's going on in the world. I'm on social just like everyone else. I'm reading things like everything else, but taking the time to really put that together for me in my mind is important time for me, because that's how I start to fuel new ideas. But my team that sits around me, they are probably the best individuals I've ever worked with. And I think that they keep me thinking creatively. They're able to push me and say, you really think that's gonna be a good idea? Or frame something another way. Even with our brand, we, as we do brand refreshes, we're never done. I always want to see, well, if I leaned it forward a little bit more, what does that look like? And do it a little bit more and push me to be uncomfortable, because that's where you find something that's magical, is in your discomfort. So, and I love change, so I'm not someone that wants to lock it and leave it, so that also helps. But my team is so fantastic and so supportive and really helps me every day to keep young, keep fresh, and keep my eyes on things.
Yeah, and I think, staying in beta, that's one of the things I say as human beings, right? That we're the greatest app ever created. There's no app greater than us.
Yes.
Right? And apps are always in beta, right? They're always updating, always improving. And so if we're that way and behave that way as a human being, my gosh, right? The possibilities are endless.
Oh, yes.
And so that mindset, that growth mindset, that beginner's mindset, that openness and eagerness to learn something every day, but also know that the NIH, not invented here, you ain't the only one with a good idea, right? So knowing that your team has that too, I think is wonderful and important, and making sure you stay rested and ready to fight the good fight, I think is key. As you start to look at the future, right, now that we've got the energy and everything, what are you peeking and looking around the corner for, or anticipating or hopeful about in the future for the credit union, especially with storytelling?
Yeah, I think that you're going to see First Tech really continue to hone in on our member. And everything that we do, that member is going to continue to be at the center. And we're going to continue to focus on personalizing their experience, being able to know what you want so that we deliver for you. So you're not coming to us and having to ask. We already know based on the information that we know about you. I think you're going to see First Tech right now. We're more of a regional footprint, and I think we have the opportunity to be national. We have companies that are all around the country that are in our field of membership, and I think we now have locked in enough about our suite of products, our strong brand, our membership base. It's time to put the foot on the gas, and so I think you'll see that from us.
And the fact that everybody's everywhere now.
We're everywhere.
Right?
We're everywhere.
So your members,
Yep.
your members are everywhere now. It's not necessarily confined to a region anymore
Yep.
because of the pandemic and the way that work has changed over time. And so I think that opportunity to keep the members centered and focused, but also looking at the opportunities and peaking. And I love the idea of, how do I get to know you better? Mm-hmm. How do I get to see your habits, your behaviors, the things that are important to you, so that we can offer you the right things and not just this salvo of stuff, that we actually fine tune what we're delivering to you and the opportunities and the offers for you and the stories that we're telling.
And that's a huge component of it, is the storytelling. So if you think about the traditional branch environment where you're going in, you're having a conversation with whoever you're working with, and you can read any article that tells you the branches are dead, and you can read 6 more that tell you they're fully alive. But there is opportunities that you're telling us what you need. You're sharing things about your journey. You might be doing that online. There's a lot of different ways that you're providing me information about you. It's then using that information and the data we already have about you and some of your habits to then say, okay, this is where we think you should go. And I think that's really taking the relationship to the next level. And so that's really important for the whole story of First Tech and the community of it and all of that. I think it all comes together for me.
And we go all the way back to relationships.
We do.
How about that, right?
That's really good.
That was smooth.
That was good.
That was very smooth.
Good. Yes, we did.
Right?
We did it.
All the way back to relationships, back to the future, if you will. I'm not surprised by a lot of the things that you're sharing. I'm glad that we're getting a chance for you to actually share them with others, because we've spent time around each other. This is the surprising thing for me, is that story of that person, right? Your human catalyst for you. And I think we all have that person who wants nothing but the best for us, like that. So that's magical to know that you had that person, and you're also probably that for someone. Maybe unbeknownst to you, or you do know that you have that person in your life because it's the right thing to do, because someone did it for you. Right? So all that being said, that was just my roundabout way of getting to this one little fun part. So this is not necessarily for our viewers, but this is for my personal satisfaction. I like to ask a single question that really doesn't have a lot to do, but it does, around the future of something. Right? And so there is a show on Netflix. It's called The Future Of. And it actually looks at the future of different areas in our life. And so I've been asking every guest to look at this list. Dogs, dating, houseplants, gaming, space vacations, cheeseburgers, death, fashion, skyscrapers, sports, health, or headphones, and to select 2 areas that you would like to know the future of. Because now that we've discussed the future of First Tech and everything, so please give that a look-see really quickly. And I'm not going to influence you at all. We've had a really crazy trend in this question, and we want to see.
Now I feel the pressure, because I don't know the other answers. So what if I'm crazy?
Zero pressure. Zero pressure. I'll tell you what I selected. Fashion and sports.
Interesting. I was going to go fashion and health.
Fashion and health. And why?
I think fashion.
Well, you ain't gotta say no more. Listen, they don't even.
Okay.
Words are not even needed. We already understand that.
Yes, I need to be on point, so I need to know where turns are going. So
facts on facts.
Yes, but health, I think, as I start to get older and thinking about, taking care of myself, taking care of my family, taking care of others. Where are we going now? Even with the pandemic and all of vaccines and all of these things, and just knowing more about the future of health, I think would be really interesting.
So, the future of health, energy, your ability to tell stories, right? To show up, because you have to be present to find the stories and to see the stories. Makes perfect sense. Of course, though, fashionista, I know you about your fits and your looks. So I'm not. That is not even.
Good. I was going to try to pick dogs or something, but I knew that wouldn't be real. But you got it.
This is you on brand with those selections for sure. I really appreciate you revealing your process, your creative process. I think that's important. The empathy that you bring to the work that you do, that's reflected in the work, but even more so the fact that you're going around bumping as many people as possible and letting them understand why you're doing and telling the stories that you're telling. And I just wish you nothing but great health, because we need you.
Thank you.
We need the work that you're doing. I just am thrilled to be affiliated. I'm honored to be a part of the community, to be a member of First Tech, and you all including me and inviting me to join forces. Let's tell more stories.
Yeah.
Let's
Well,
tell more
Thank you
stories.
for having us. And honestly, you've been in our world for such a long time. And I was talking to you about your book and seeing us in 2007 when I first met you.
know, right?
I was a baby. So
Yes.
thank you for keeping us creative and thinking. And you're an inspiration to us too. So,
Done and done.
Thank you.
Chylon, our viewers, thank you so much for tuning in to More Than, our very special guest, VP of Marketing, Chylon Pappas. And we appreciate you. Be well. Godspeed. Chylon, you the best.
Thank you.